Despite all the news this week, we want to take a moment to pause and remember the 13 U.S. service members who were killed in Afghanistan a year ago today. The prayers of everyone here at Washington Watch are with their families. And joining me now to discuss, as we remember these patriots, is U.S. Representative Jim Banks, who serves in the U.S. Navy Reserve and was deployed to Afghanistan during Operation Enduring Freedom and Freedom's Sentinel. He also serves on 3 House committees, including the House Armed Services Committee, and he is chairman of the Republican Study Committee. He's from the 3rd Congressional District of Indiana. Congressman Banks, welcome to the show today.
Hey, good to be with you. Thanks for having me back.
Well, there's a lot to cover. First, it's kind of a sad anniversary. 1 year ago today, 13 Americans lost their lives at the hand of a suicide bomber during the evacuation of Afghanistan. What are your thoughts 1 year later?
Well, 1 year later, and still nobody has ever been held accountable for what that drastic, deadly event that happened. There hasn't been any adequate oversight, hearing, or investigation on Capitol Hill about the incidents leading up to it. It was all completely avoidable. Remember, President Trump had us on a path to pull out of Afghanistan, but to keep a light footprint of special operation forces there to prevent the catastrophe that ended up happening. Instead, the top military leaders and the commander-in-chief made decisions that shut down the Bagram airfield, which prevented us from evacuating Americans and all of that equipment that we left behind. And then the deadly event that happened at the gates of Kabul International Airport there 1 year ago that killed 13 of our service members. So I guarantee you, when Republicans get back the majority after this midterm election, one of the very first things that we will do will be to hold investigations and oversight hearings on the Armed Services Committee that will dig in and demand answers to a lot of these questions. But so far, the Democrats who control the House and the Senate have been covering for Joe Biden and the Biden administration. That's not going to last any longer when we get the majority back.
Congressman Banks, this is undoubtedly a tragic anniversary. Those were tragic events. The fact is, however, in the armed services, tragedy happens. It's one of the risks that you assume when you put on the uniform and things like this happen. Congressional investigations don't arise out of every military death. Why do you think this is a situation that warrants that?
Well, there are a lot of reasons to believe that the decisions that were made were made on a political basis by a president who was so hell-bent on getting out of Afghanistan that he didn't have a responsible plan to do it, and wanted to do it in a way that deviated from the plans that were set in place by the former president that he despised so much. So there are so many questions about the poor decisions, the lack of leadership, and the political decisions that were made by President Biden and General Milley and others who were on the ground in those moments. And that does deserve, and one of the key functions, one of the key roles of the Congress is to provide oversight. And the House Armed Services Committee is the committee with the jurisdiction over the Pentagon that should provide that type of oversight. And I can tell you 1 year later, that has not happened. There has not been a response that's adequate that would dig into those questions. And as deadly and sad as it was losing those 13 service members, what we've seen happen in Afghanistan every day since, becoming a safe haven for ISIS-K, Al-Qaeda, and other terrorist groups. Again, the way that we pulled out has also changed the perception of America around the world with our adversaries and our allies who look at America a lot different than what they looked at us before that deadly and tragic event a year ago. So that's why it deserves more investigations and accountability, and that's what Republicans are going to bring when we get the majority back.
Coincidentally, in a couple of Uber rides this week, I was driven around by someone from Afghanistan who recently had come to the country, and the stories that they tell about what life is like there for their family members is truly tragic. And it continues to spiral, it seems, as a humanitarian crisis in that region. But on the issue of accountability, today, the redacted version of the affidavit that was used to search President Trump's home, to get the warrant that was used to search President Trump's home, was released. Did you have a chance to look at it? What's your reaction to what we learned or didn't learn?
Well, emphasis on redacted, because most of the affidavit is blacked out. Most of it is not being given proper transparency to the American people about this unprecedented event that happened a few weeks ago. It's never happened before in American history that they would raid the home of a chief political adversary who happens to be the former president of the United States of America. And to this day, Merrick Garland and Christopher Wray have not given an adequate response or a reason why. And that's why many of us wanted this affidavit to be made public. But then when we got our eyes on it just a few minutes ago, to see that most of it is marked out and redacted because they don't want to provide that transparency tells us something that's very fishy about all of this. So remember the track record of the DOJ under Joe Biden, and even before, the highly politicized nature of their activities in recent years. The track record means that we shouldn't give them the benefit of the doubt. We should demand greater answers and transparency. Yeah. And in this case, the fact that they're not giving us that transparency tells us that there were probably very likely very political motivations for why they raided the former president's home.
Congressman Banks, in the next segment, we're actually going to have a conversation with a former Department of Justice attorney who's going to provide his perspective on what the affidavit contained as far as what we can see. But do you expect, in light of all the redacted information, to learn anything more about the justification for this raid, or do we have all the information we're going to have?
Well, we don't have any information at all. I mean, at this point, even the redacted affidavit doesn't have footnotes at the bottom that explains why they redacted all of the information that they did, which is the normal procedure of a situation like this. So, but if there's ever been the right guy in the right place at the right time, it's going to be Jim Jordan chairing the House Judiciary Committee come the 1st of January when we take back the majority, because the Judiciary Committee has the oversight of the Department of Justice. So a minute ago, we talked about oversight of the Pentagon and the fallout of what happened in Afghanistan. That will happen in the Armed Services Committee. But the House Judiciary Committee, led by the next chairman, Jim Jordan, is going to hold hearings on this subject, not just the Mar-a-Lago raid by the FBI, but a lot of other incidents that have occurred on Joe Biden's watch for the Department of Justice in a very political nature. Those are going to be primetime committee hearings that you're going to want to watch on TV and watch Jim Jordan demand and extract answers from the top leaders of the DOJ and the FBI that are going to be forced to answer the questions that they don't want to answer today.
Well, Congressman Banks, the existence of those hearings, of course, assume that Republicans take control of the House of Representatives in November. That has kind of been assumed for a while, but recently Speaker Nancy Pelosi has indicated that she's not sure that's going to happen. Let's play clip one.
Republicans should be very, very, very scared this morning about their prospects. I have never believed that we would not hold the House. That's my mission, and that's what I hope to accomplish, and I have a plan to do it.
What's your response to that, Congressman?
Well, it is true. The majority is not going to be handed to us. We have to go out and fight for it and work hard to get out the vote in the midterm elections so that we can win back the House majority and take the gavel away from Nancy Pelosi and give it to Kevin McCarthy, the next speaker, and have Republicans like Jim Jordan chair important committees like the Judiciary Committee. There's so much at stake. And if anything, Nancy Pelosi is reminding our voters and our side that we can't take it for granted. We have to go out and work hard for it. But the fact of the matter is that the American people are sick and tired of the poor leadership that they've received from the Democrats, whether it's higher gas prices, higher inflation, the drug epidemic that's killing fentanyl is now the leading cause of death of Americans my age because of the open border policies of this administration, the border crisis, the supply chain crisis, the world being turned upside down, the situation in Ukraine and China. I could go on and on and on of the activities in less than 2 years that have occurred that have made America less better off than what we were just a couple of years ago when Donald Trump was in the White House. So the American people are sick of it. I imagine this midterm election is going to be an indictment on their poor leadership and that of President Biden. But we have to go out and work for it. We can't take it for granted. The Democrats are going to do everything that they can to keep the majority, and Pelosi is reminding us of that. So we have to keep that in mind.
We are, of course, talking to Congressman Jim Banks from Indiana. Despite the list of concerns that you listed there, President Biden actually sounds pretty confident. He's gotten some things through Congress recently that he wanted, and he thinks that these are some big accomplishments that are going to pay off. Let's play clip 3.
But we never gave up. We never gave in. And we're delivering for the American people now. And now, even our critics have been forced to acknowledge real progress. A record of big accomplishments, matched by few administrations in history.
What's your response to that, Congressman?
Well, it is, again, a reminder from Joe Biden that what is at stake. I mean, from the moment that he was sworn into office on January 20th of 2021, the actions of this president and the party that is in total control of the federal government, they have passed bill after bill to send America down a socialist path. And that's what's at stake. They're uprooting the values and the foundation of this country that makes it the greatest country in the history of the world and turning it into a socialist country. And we can't let them do it. We can't let them get away with it any longer.
Well, it is coming down to the wire, and it is much closer than a lot of people thought it was going to be, it seems, a few months ago, but time will tell. And as always, the American people will determine what the outcome is, and motivation is going to have a lot to do with that. But Congressman Jim Banks, thanks so much for stopping by today.
Thank you.